Okay, before we begin, let me go over some ground rules and we'll also give a very quick overview of our development environment setup. First of all, remember that it's a video, so use it like one. So if you feel like I'm going too fast, pause it and rewind it a bit if you want to hear something again. If it's too slow, feel free to increase the playback speed and make me sound like a chipmunk. So go ahead and try to use the video for what it's good for, which is adjusting to your own pace. Now remember that source code is available, so if you miss something or you want to look something up later, it's there for you, so don't have to worry about missing something on the screen. The source code is definitely 100% will be available to you, even though it's going to be a real commercial website. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to build up the site piece by piece, which will mean that the current lectures before folder will contain the previous lectures after content as a starting point. That way you could jump into any lecture and see where we started and see kind of where we ended as well, and that keeps going. Now, certain things will have to be done off screen to save time. So sometimes I also have times when I just need to pause and think for a second where we're going next. I certainly don't think you want to sit there and wait with me while I think, so certain things will have to be paused, done off screen, and then put back on. But certainly once I put it on screen, I will go ahead and go over it and explain it. So to avoid having you watch me type, which could be pretty boring, I will go ahead and try to do some things off screen and then we'll just explain them as we go along. But some on-screen typing won't be able to be avoided anyway. Another thing is, I would love to have recorded both screens. I usually try to, when I develop, have two monitors in front of me. That way, especially if we use something like Browser Sync, which we're going to go over in a minute, it's so much easier to have a code editor in one screen or one monitor, and then the display or the browser in another monitor. That way, whenever you change something in your code, it immediately appears on your monitor. However, this is unfortunately a luxury we can't have since there's only a one screen type of video. On top of which, I can't even put both the browser and the code editor in the same window like I did before, since we're going to need to actually code things as they stretch. So when the browser gets really big, it's going to be a different layout than when the browser is half size, simply because my screen is zoomed in so you could see everything much better. So unfortunately, we will have to be switching a lot between the coder editor and the browser screens. So I apologize for that, but there's nothing I could do without having you not be able to see very well as to what I type. Okay, so let's jump into the code editor and see what our starting point is. Okay, so I'm right now in my terminal window, and if I do pwd, which gives us the current directory I'm in, you'll see that I'm in examples lecture 29 before folder. And if we do NLS on it, you'll see that I have CSS, fonts, JS folder, and a starter index.html. So the first thing we want to do is we want to start using Browser Sync. And the way we want to do it is if you actually go up one folder and do an ls, you'll see a before and after. And we're going to be kind of living in the after all the time. So let's go back to after, because that's what we're going to be developing. And this is the place where we want to actually start up our browser sync. So whenever we edit anything, this is going to automatically appear in the browser. So let's go ahead, let me recall my browser sync command, and we'll go over it. So hopefully in the welcome videos, I went over how to install Browser Sync, and if you haven't done that, please go back to that video and go through how to install it. You will need to install Node.js, for example, and so on. Go ahead and review those videos. So Browser Sync is a command, browser-sync. We're going to say start. We're going to start the Browser Sync. It's going to be a server for us. In other words, Browser Sync will itself serve our website from the directory that we're in, which is right now in the lecture 29 after directory. And we're also going to say dash directory, which basically tells Browser Sync to go ahead and list the directory structure instead of trying to serve up a file. So it will go ahead and show us all these files as the starting point. And the last thing is I want to see which files do I need to watch for modification so that the Browser Sync can go ahead and reload my page automatically and immediately the second any of those files that match this criteria change. In this case, I'll just put star because I want any files in this directory that change to immediately be reloaded in the browser. So I'll go ahead and press enter and start my browser and go ahead. You'll see that I'm now in the browser. It jumped me straight to it. And let's actually go back to take a look. What it's telling me that here are my access URLs, and it went ahead and jumped me straight to this page. But if you take a look here, there's another page called HTTP localhost with a different port, 3001. And that's a UI of the browser sync, which I haven't showed you before. So let's go ahead and jump into that UI. And you'll see that's a whole configuration UI for our browser sync. And I encourage you to go ahead and explore it a little bit. Meanwhile, this is our directory right here, and if we click on this, we really are going to see absolutely nothing because in our code we have absolutely nothing so far. So let's go to our code. So what we have here is a standard Bootstrap starter page, and if you notice, we kind of dropped support for Internet Explorer 9, so you don't see the shims here, and you don't see that we are using jQuery 1 point something. We're actually using jQuery 2.1.4. So we're dropping support for IE9. Hopefully, the very, very little number of people that still have it won't even be on the site at all. So we don't want to support that. So the only thing we really have here is the standard setup of the meta tags, and we put out titled as David Chu's China Bistro. That's the restaurant name. And the only thing we want to do here is we want to try to at least set up, the first thing is our styles.css. If we go to CSS folder, and there's a whole bunch of files here we really don't need. We really just need the minified bootstrap.min.css, and that is in fact what we're including right here. But just for reference, if we wanted to look into them later, I left all of them here. We'll probably erase them before we deploy. And what's important is that you see styles.css that's sitting right in this folder, and we'll go ahead and open that file. So the first thing we want to do here is set up some global styles that the entire page and really across all pages will be true. So we'll do that using body, and we'll set up, first of all, the font size. We'll set up a standard font size. We'll go ahead and use 16 pixels. We'll set up the color, and the color will be FFF, and that will give us white. So it means any text that we have is going to be white. And the background color that we'll set up is going to be, and this is something that we actually have to look at our design, so let's take a look here. So the design of the background color was this particular reddish color, but what we're going to do instead is use 61122F, and that's going to match kind of the napkin style and the different restaurant paraphernalia that we have seen in a restaurant. So we'll go ahead and use 61122F, and we'll give it a semicolon. So now if we go ahead and look at our browser, and for some reason didn't refresh, here we go. Now it's refreshed again. Should have refreshed automatically. I'm not really sure what happened. We see now we have this kind of maroon color in the background. So that's our background. And the last thing we want to do is take a look as to the general font. And the general font here, it says Oxygen. Well, let's go ahead and put the general font, so font family, and we'll say Oxygen. And this is really not going to work. And let's take a look here, and we'll just go ahead and put a simple paragraph here, and we'll say, hello world. And this is not going to work, the hello world. And the reason it's not going to work is because we don't really have Oxygen on my machine as a font. Now, it's very possible that I actually imported it because this looks very close to what Oxygen actually looks like. So it's possible that I imported it onto my machine. But on regular machines, you're not going to have this font. So how do we get this font? Well, the way we get this font is we could go to google.com/fonts and search for this Oxygen font, and you'll see the first one is Oxygen, the second one is called Oxygen Mono, so that's a different one. And the way to get that font into our page is to go to this button right here that says Quick Use, and we'll go ahead and click that, and it asks us, well, what kind of fonts? They want just normal, they want the light and the bold. We're going to go ahead and take both, and you can see that Google is telling you also how much of a load on the pages is going to give you. So sometimes these fonts have lots of different options, and you could load it so much that it will go into red, and that which will mean that every page will download a lot of different kind of things about this font that will make the page load slower. We don't want that, but we certainly are okay since it's sitting in the green. Now, if we scroll back down a little bit here, you'll see that here's a code to add to your website. Well, this seems pretty simple. We'll go ahead and select that, and we'll go ahead and copy. We'll go back to our page, and we just need to paste this link right here. And now our page has that font. The only thing is, if you go back to the page, it tells you here's actually how you should specify it. We'll go ahead and use that too. We'll copy that. We'll go back to our code editor, and we'll replace this font family with what they tell us to specify it as, which is this line, Oxygen and sans serif, in case Oxygen is not available, which it should be, now that we've imported it from Google. So now we could go to our web page. Let's go ahead and take a look at our web page. I will refresh just in case. Yeah, and the font basically probably wasn't on my machine because it's exactly the same font that's showing up. So let's go back to the code editor. We'll go ahead and erase this. We don't need that. And we're basically ready to go. So now we've set up our background color, our default font size, and we even imported a font from Google Fonts. We're good to go, and we're ready to move on to the next thing, which is going to be the header of our website.